Leap have recently released an update, a new way of opening up new cases inside the system to enforce additional compliance fields on the cases. Previously, whenever you opened up a case inside Leap, you had the option of ignoring the compliance items such as conflict of interest check, checklist, and AML and ID check sections on the case. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, if I go to any random case in this list, on the left-hand side of our cases, they all have compliance. And inside there is an integrated checklist for compliance management. So in effect, if you have completed ID checks, AML checks, and conflict of interest checks throughout the life of the case, Leap keep track of all that through the checklist on the left-hand side. And very recently as well, I'm going to go through a bit of a demonstration on this. There is a compliance dashboard manager as well called Compliance Monitor now. So it's all integrated, and anyone involved with and concerned with compliance management will now have an integrated dashboard which works with that. So this whole new enforcement system for new cases has been released, I believe, to coincide with that as well. It just makes sense. So what I've done is I have built a template on my test system here to demonstrate what the outcome looks like, okay, for opening up a new case using this new system. So instead of clicking on New Matter or dropping down New Matter from Recurring Template over to the right-hand side, we would click on Menu, Home, and you would find Workflow, New Matter, which brings up a new matter processing list. So you can start a new case transaction and you can specify which case type you'd like to work inside. I'm going to specify a will as an example. You would be walked through a couple of familiar looking screens with details, just in a bit of a different order. So you can see we can attach the client or clients up the top of the case list here. The description of the case, you can just leave it as the default, or you can uncheck auto and manually fill it in from there. Billing mode, not really applicable unless you are in a legal aid funded type case. Okay. As we go further down, you have person responsible, person acting and assisting. They're all very familiar fields. If you're not familiar with those, you probably just need some basic training, to be honest. And then access and permissions. Typically, we don't touch that unless there's any specific, restrictions we want to put in place for this particular case. Once we've got those basic details, you'll see on the left-hand side, we can toggle to the next step, which is effectively the compliance enforcement section that I was referring to. So this is effectively where you can say, have we completed all conflict of interest checks in this case? Okay. There were actually numerous different fields that I could have enforced as part of this process. It's all customizable, but AML checks, ID checks, conflict of interest checks, and risk and summaries on there as well. So just for practicality's sake, typically you would only really conduct the conflict of interest check at the beginning of the case or before you take instructions. So just for simplicity and practicality's sake, I'm just going to enforce this one at this stage here. So if we have done a conflict of interest check on this case, we are telling the user you are not able to create a new file without specifying when you completed the conflict of interest check. I could have enabled more fields as well, by the way. This is just the example I gave you. So I'm just backdating it to the 9th there. I then proceed to the workflow section, and this does work with the workflow as well. It kind of is a prerequisite for this. You need to have the workflow system enabled and configured for this to actually operate. And that'll make more sense if you're not familiar with that shortly, as I will proceed with another example. Okay, just to set this up, I was just getting to adding a Mr. Tony Soprano in this case here for the case. Like I said, if I didn't have time to complete all these checks as well, and if I just save this, okay, and I'll come back to it later, you can see the record inside the matter processing list is still pending. So this one I can come back to later if I need to. It has a whole bunch of filter functionality. So if you are the administrator for an organization and you're the one adding the new cases to the system and you want to keep it that way, this would be your main go-to screen moving forward if you were to adopt this system. To pick up this case and proceed, after you've finished all your checks, etc., you can go ahead and then create a new matter from there. After the matter has been created, it automatically opens up the compliance section if it needs more attention as well. So what I had actually specified is the outcomes, and then I wanted to add additional notes inside there as well. So what I've done is filled in those bits. We can specify that we do require the rest of these items as well, but we have not yet done them. We're going to do them now that we've taken instruction for the case. Okay. So if you're a fan of the idea of that, enforcing the required compliance steps upon the setup of the case, the only practical negative that I can think of with this system at the moment, in its current state, as the time of recording this, by the time you receive this, is the lack of recurring template integration. So if you are a fan of recurring matter templates, where you would drop down and select the type of case you're after, let's say state disputes, for argument's sake. Okay, similar sort of screens, pops up, goes directly inside the case, and you can actually see the folder structure more than anything else. That's usually what people are after, is a folder structure for, so everyone's working on the same structure across the entire firm. That's the only thing that lacks the integration. There's no way to retrospectively add a recurring template to a newly created file. So this one I've just gone through as a demonstration for you. I can't then link to the recurring matter template. But here is a simple workaround for your reference. It's not pretty, but it does the job. On your computer somewhere, you can create a dummy folder structure. This is what we want the folder structure to look like on every single case. And a simple workaround is to simply grab that template and drag and drop onto the case after you've set up the file. Import that. This is just a bit of an old school trick. And effectively, we're inside the case. You had the benefit of using the enforcement of compliance section inside there, and now the standard folder structure has been set up. So it's a bit of a workaround with the recurring template. It's not perfect because there are other parameters with the recurring templates, but that's the only practical issue I can see with this if there's a firm wanting to adopt this new compliance enforcement system. Now that you've seen the reason, what we're actually looking to achieve and why we have that there, the enforcement of the compliance sections on the case upon the setup, I'll just show you a little bit of the back end of how this system is operated and how you actually customize it as well. So if you go to menu, top left corner, we're going to go down to other on the left-hand side. And we are going to find workflow administration. It is part of the workflow system, so you will have to enable it from the marketplace, enable it from there. There are video tutorials online for this, or better yet, speak to a consultant like me. We are experts, we do nothing but, so we would be the best people positioned to set this all up for you and consult and provide you training, etc. It's a bit of a shameless plug, but there it is. We're the best people to handle this stuff. So when you go to the workflow administration section, it defaults you into the workflow builder. Anyone not familiar with that, again, refer to your consultants or online training. In the top right corner, you'll see this newly added section called Matter Templates. Okay, inside here, I've just added a couple of templates in experimenting through this process, but you can create a new template down the bottom left corner here. You select which case template this type is going to be. Let's say I create one for criminal law. I'd want to give it a name, and this is where you might actually separate it for private or legal aid funded. Okay, different requirements for the different types of funding types on these types of files as an example. And this is what I meant by all the compliance stages on the left-hand side here. So you can enforce AML, conflict check, overview, ID checks, risk summary, and source of funds as an example. So it's all compliance. So if you wanted everything to be recorded at the point of setting up the case, in all honesty, I can't make much sense of that. You would select all and then you would move it across to the right hand side. What I've practically selected was the conflict check section, and then I've added all of that over to the right hand side. If I didn't want to include something like the date of it, I don't know why I would remove that, but if you wanted to, you can deselect it just as easy as that. We'll save that, okay, and I'll close out of that. I've created my new template there, and if you want to enable it and test it, you just set as active inside there as well. Once it's active, you can cycle back to the beginning of this video and go to menu, home, and create a new matter off the template. Okay, I don't think I actually activated that criminal one in the end, but it would have been sitting inside there ready for testing as well. So that's a bit of an introduction to this new matter template system. There will be another video I record very shortly in relation to the new workflow functions. There are some new released workflow functions which are really useful and worth looking at. And if you're not familiar with the basic concept of the workflow inside Leap, it's likely as well. Leap have many different functions and they don't really advertise a whole lot of them after you've signed up to Leap. They are there. They are seriously worth looking into, and also especially with these new features that are built in there as well. So look out for the other video. Highly recommend you have a watch of that as well.